All right. Well, not a great start. Didn't go the way I had hoped. Can we hear me now? Am I alive? Am I live now? Let's see if this is working the old fashioned way. All right. So I tried to use a new thing that was supposed to allow me to shift between stuff. And it worked this afternoon when I did a test run, but it doesn't always work. So let that be a lesson for your SAT on Saturday if you were taking it, or sometime this month, is you got to have backup plans because sometimes things do not always go as they seem. So we are going to try to recover here. But yeah, let's see. I think it's working now. I am overlapping. What does that mean? Does that mean I'm doing something? Is it picking up multiple audios? I don't know what that means. Okay, it's fine. Okay, good, good, good. So yeah, because yes, I did try to use some new things, but I saw some of the chats as I was trying to restart all this stuff, and yeah, my main thing is I recently took, like many of you, practice test 11. I'm not going to spoil anything, so don't worry about questions getting spoiled. But it got me thinking about some of the big picture strategies that I want to make sure that people are aware of for the test, and just make sure that you guys are feeling really good and have some backup plans, like I just kind of did for this, for what could happen in that section where we know the reading hard module is really hard to finish, where we know even maybe sometimes the first reading module can be really hard to finish if we're not planning ahead and on guard. So I do want to talk about that. But if you guys have some initial questions while I just kind of resettle myself here, feel free to ask them. And yes, and also let me know, when are you taking the test? Is this mostly people who are taking it Saturday? That's the big international date, the one that most people are probably signed up for. But there are SATs given in many high schools, usually in the United States. I don't know about other places in the world, but usually throughout March, throughout April. I have some of my students who have taken it already. They took it like as early as March 3rd. So yeah, it can happen. But I am very curious when you guys are taking it, and to make sure I can, as much as I can, get you prepared. But if you have initial kind of questions, feel free to ask them. I did preemptively, I think, answer some questions in my description for this video, which I don't know if I can access easily, but to kind of preempt some things. This Settele, read this, or this is pre-recorded. It is definitely not pre-recorded. I just spent 12 minutes trying to figure out how to log on, so I wouldn't have done that if it was pre-recorded. So a couple things. A lot of people are worried, is the March SAT harder than usual? No, absolutely not. All SATs are the same overall level of difficulty. I would also say that all real SATs are the same level of difficulty as the practice tests. I know that is something that you might experience differently from what I'm telling you, but I promise you that is the case. It's just that, yes, we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and how our particular strengths, or usually our weaknesses align with the test that we're given, can dramatically affect our perception of how we're doing and what our ultimate score might be. So the key is to recognize it's mostly the same, and that if it starts to feel different, it might just be the luck of the draw of the questions you're looking at right that moment, but it also might just be in your head because you're nervous. So try to keep cool. Yes, it doesn't. Remember too, there isn't just one March SAT. People are taking this all around the world at all different times. There will be different test forms, different questions. You might have some of the same questions as your friends. You might have a lot of different questions from your friends, from other people. So don't panic if your test doesn't match up with other people. It doesn't mean that you got placed in a certain module. It's all part of the plan. So that's okay. Let's see what else. We do have some specific questions here. I'll try to get a few questions in before I give my little presentation I was going to give about some big picture strategy things. I don't know if this is going to work as well as I thought it would before, but we'll try our best. Definitely K-Mind Gaming, that big question there, how to manage time effectively during the test. That's the one I mostly want to talk about. So I'll hold that question for a little bit. You do need to know radians and degrees for the test. It is rare that you will get a radians question, but it does come up. So be prepared for it. I do have a lesson on that. Dependent and independent clauses is definitely a big part of the Standard English Convention's grammar questions. It is something that you can still work on in the next few days. It sometimes for the hardest sentences, it's just hard to hear whether or not it's a sentence or not. But at least if you know when to look for that, that's really, really important. And Karamavaz, almost the book. How much should I work? How much work should I be doing? That is a good question. And I do want to kind of start off with something like that. Because a lot of you, as you get closer to a test, you think you need to be studying more. But it's as counterintuitive as it may be, I think it's actually better to start studying less as you get closer and closer to Saturday. If your test is later in March, in April, then fine, you've got more time. But if your test is on Saturday, I don't want you spending all of Friday draining your brain and wearing yourself out studying, right? I mean, hopefully you've been studying for a long time leading up to this. So hopefully you have a good sense of what your strengths and weaknesses are. Maybe there's a couple things you want to review, but you don't want to be cramming for the SAT. This is not the kind of test where that's going to be helpful. So for most people, Friday should basically be a day off from SAT studying. It's totally okay to go out with your friends, to go see a movie, to watch TV, play video games, read a book, whatever you want to do, whatever relaxes you, exercise, whatever it is that is not SAT related on Friday, to get yourself in a less stressed state of mind and to rest your brain, because you're definitely going to need it first thing in the morning on Saturday. So I know that is counterintuitive, but I promise you, you've done all the work you can. So Friday should not be a night where you are staying up late studying. If you have school, go to school, come home, take it easy, put the TV on, relax, and rest your brain. And you can, this will be posted after it's done. So if your parents give you a hard time, you can send them to this minute number 7 of this thing. And you can then show them that this person is an expert and knows what he's talking about and is giving you permission to take it easy. As long as you are in bed relatively early Friday night, ideally you should also be going to bed pretty early tonight and Thursday, just kind of getting that habit going that you're able to kind of fall asleep. Exercise definitely helps for that, but you don't want to be cramming because you will be tired. And the number one, in my opinion, predictor of your performance on the test is your state of mind. So if you are tired, you're not gonna be able to focus. You're not gonna be able to move fast. You're not gonna be able to notice the right things. And so resting your brain is very, very important. So I definitely think I've stressed that plenty. So we'll talk a little bit about Blue Book. Looking at, yes, Ahmad Malik here. So I took the Blue Book Practice Test 11 and got 680 in English, but then I took the number 9, my scores dropped to 520. Well, it depends. This might be a good example of what I was just talking about. If you took that 520 after a long day of school and you're busy and you're tired and you're stressed, and then you go home and take a practice test, yeah, that's going to have a dramatic effect on the score. In fact, that kind of drop also suggests that maybe you made a lot of careless mistakes in the first module that put you in the easy second module. Hard to say for sure, but possible. As far as practice tests go, I highly recommend that you guys do not do another practice test between now and the test. Unless you've never done one and you need to get a sense of what's on the SAT in the first place, you really don't want to be doing a practice test, a very tiresome experience, this close to the real thing. You're better off doing targeted practice on things that you know you've struggled with on previous practice tests. You can go back to old practice tests. You can look at mistakes you've made, questions you've struggled with, and try to see if you've learned from those mistakes. But at this point, it's kind of why I wanted to do this on Wednesday, is taking a practice test. You've probably missed that window. It is just not worth your time. And you're probably not going to get much out of it other than a lot of stress. And you'll probably, because you have school and you're taking it late at night, you're going to get a bad score. And now that's the score hanging around your neck as you go into the test. So I don't recommend taking another practice test at this point. Let's see what else we got before I start fiddling with some buttons here. What to do when I see a math problem. Yeah, we're going to get to the timing thing. What do I see when I see a math problem I've never seen before? Well, in certain senses, you are always going to see math problems you've never seen before, because the SAT loves to vary the way they ask questions. But in the real sense, it's very unlikely you're going to see a math problem you've truly never seen before, unless you've never really practiced. But the same topics keep coming up and again and again. And I'll remind you to maybe look at the predictions videos that I made back in the fall. They still are true. They are still good predictions of what's going to be on the test. And the one for math hits a bunch of topics that you are very likely to see. So they may phrase the question in ways you've never seen before, but the same topics keep coming up. So you really shouldn't be surprised. But remember, things like plug points and new equations allow you to kind of be flexible. If you have points and you have equations, see what you can do by plugging them in. But main thing is don't panic. And we'll get to more about that with the timing. Iqbal Zafar 7. The only problem I get is identifying hard, independent, and dependent clauses, and I get them wrong sometimes. I'm taking on the 14th. Can I get my information ideas strong? That wouldn't be information ideas. That would be standard English conventions, as you said. But information ideas is the passages. We're going to talk a little bit about passages. Honestly, that's the hardest thing to improve, especially in a short amount of time. But I think if you know the grammar rules, that would be the place to maybe slow down a little and make sure you're getting those questions right. Grammar is more predictable than the passages. So odds of you working through a hard grammar question and getting it right, that's better than probably working through a hard passage and getting it right, especially since a hard passage is probably going to take 4 or 5 minutes, whereas a hard grammar question is at most 2 minutes. And even that is probably just because you're nervous. I don't know how long the stream will last because I was supposed to start at 6 and I was delayed. So we're going to have to deal with some annoying things here as we go. How can you break out of a score plateau? The easiest thing is to just try to figure out what mistakes you make most often. And that's going to differ for everybody. But that would be the kind of thing where, if you keep making careless mistakes, then when we talk about pacing later, better pay attention because fixing easy questions is much easier than fixing hard ones. So I know a lot of people want to focus on the hard ones, but it's the easy ones that are obviously the easier points to get. So you want to make sure you do that. We have someone at new user. How'd you get that name? That's a good handle. Hey Settele, I just took the school day SAT and I felt good. And I didn't feel like there was anything I didn't know. That's great. Do you think it's worth it to try and study for the SAT coming up in 2 days? If you were signed up for both, it should feel very similar. The only thing I'd say is if there was something on that test you took, the school day one, that you were like, darn it, I wish I knew this, or I wish I remembered this formula, this rule, whatever it may be. Yeah, review that, try to fill in that gap. But otherwise, it's just another chance of, rolling the dice and hoping for some good vocab and some good passages and stuff like that. So I think, would be the judge at this point. If you were ready for the school day test, you're ready for Saturday's test. So you don't need to probably do too much. Trads H7K. If you do all the hard question bank College Board releases, can you get a 1600? No, obviously not. Because first of all, then I would have a 1600 every time. And I don't, because I've done every question that they've released. And I still probably half the time get stuck at like a 1570, 1580, which is awesome. I'm not, I'm happy with that. But being perfect is hard to do. And so it's not just about knowing and memorizing everything. There are going to be differences. There are going to be things that throw you off balance. There are words that you might not have seen in any practice question that could come up on a vocab question. So the SAT is definitely about being flexible, but also about being, it's about memorizing things, but it's also about being flexible alongside that. So it's a mixture of the two. Cool. Let's see here. Keep asking questions. I'm going to keep kind of glancing over, but I want to see if I can do this other thing. Trads, I did notice you. I don't know. That's a cool little heart smiley face Cheshire cat looking thing. I'm not going to go over any practice questions today, just to let you know. I don't have that set up, and I have so many videos that, go find what you want. But let's see if I can do this. All right. Window. All right. Let's start with this as a reminder. of some things you can do. Is that going to work? Okay. Let's move this back down here. Okay, so this is my website. This is a good place to get all sorts of things that you need. I'm just reminding you of some things that are there. Seteletutoring.com/library. First, lessons and guides. Whatever topic you feel iffy on, I've probably got a lesson on it. So if you need to review the grammar rules, review the grammar rules. Do these little lessons. These are shorter videos. They might have some practice questions in them, but they're going to hit some key topics. And if you've taken some practice tests, you probably know which of these topics you need to review. I definitely think grammar, looking at the transition words again, that's a really easy thing to do with the time you have left. Reviewing some vocab is always easy. Certainly these XY plane categories, this is the biggest math category on the test. This is a category I came up with, but basically it's a lot of Desmos stuff, but it's also a lot of things that maybe are easy to do by hand, by plugging points into equations, plus some things that need to be memorized. Exponentials, circles, the number of solutions, whether we have lines or quadratics, the quadratic landmarks. You need to know the vocab for that. Even something as simple as lines. So there's a lot there. Geometry is obviously a less important topic on the SAT, but it is one where there's a lot of memorization. So that could also be something you look at. If you're one of my channel members, then you get access to even some questions that I wrote. But if you aren't, then I have made videos about many of the things in the question bank. So search one of these question bank IDs, and if it comes up, and there you go, I've got a video on it. So hopefully that will help you with those last minute questions that you're working on through the question bank. Like I said, you don't need to be taking another practice test at this point, but you might want to go back and review. Okay, I did test 7 and I did bad on that hard module. I want to review those questions. You can do that, and you can look at my explanations for those things. Going back here, one thing I really think is a useful thing. This is more for people maybe who are just starting their practice, but you might want to look it over, is this strategy training mode. The point of this little thing was to help you learn the process associated with a lot of questions, and to figure out, okay, what do I do when I see a grammar question? It's not just like, okay, let me read it and just see what feels right. There's a process. And so this is meant to kind of help you build that process into a habit so that you can answer those questions well. So this might be something that, again, if you're just starting your prep, this is probably more useful. You're not going to change any habits in 2 more days, but this could be really helpful. It has some the transition words and the strategies associated with each one, but that might be something to look at. But yeah, this is a great page to just kind of start filling in gaps that you come across as you're practicing. Let's switch over. Let me just see. Okay. Before we do that, let me just see what else we got. A lot of questions. Okay. Okay. All right, let's talk about these passages. I'm getting a lot of questions about passages, questions about people worried if they can get the score they've been getting on the practice test, time management. I'm seeing a lot of the same things. So let's see if we can do that. What I would love to do, and I don't know how to do it, and this has always been my problem and why I was trying to make this work. It's okay. All right, let's do this. I have a little presentation, but it's going to have 2 of my face on it, which is going to be very weird. Let's do this. Yeah, okay. Let's switch over. Pop out the chat. Okay. Let's stop sharing for a sec. And I want to talk about pacing and things like that. So let's... This isn't going to work. I had such plans for you guys with the way this was going to go. It was going to look very, very cool, but it's okay. We can do it this way. Let's see if this actually works. It has me backwards. Oh boy. There's no way for me to get rid of that, huh? All right. It's all right. What do we think? Is this stupid looking? Okay. Yeah, we'll just have to make do. So I can point to myself. It's like a bit of a mirror thing. Whatever. It's fine. It's okay. So the reason it's reversed is so that I can do one of these, but now on the right there, it's going to be that. It's going to be different. And I don't think there's a way for me to make that go away on the stupid YouTube one. So unfortunately, I think I'm stuck with that. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. Mm, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Okay. Um, So, like I said, I don't have any practice questions planned for us, but I do want to talk about big picture strategies. And I have lessons on strong words, the dumb summaries, the trap answers. Those are all great things to look at. That page I just showed you of my website, you can find all of that under the strategies tab. These are all important things for the passages. They also bleed into other types of categories, right? But I think the thing that most people neglect for the passages is the pacing. And I really this for me became a big problem when I did practice test 11 because I was basically caught off guard by the pacing. So I want to make sure that everyone is prepared for what could go wrong because we don't we're most people, myself included, are not going to have as much time as we would like to get through all the passages. So we need to make sure we have a good pacing strategy. Let's see if this works. Yes. Okay. So, first thing you should all know already is to save the passages for last. We know that the passages are the hardest, most time consuming questions, I think, generally speaking. So, we're saving those for last. And generally, right, we want to go in this order. You should know that by now. That the first thing to do is skip to number around 15, where the first grammar question is going to be. You want to start with those questions, move through the end of the section. That's going to go through the transitions, the outlines. The outlines are what the College Board calls rhetorical synthesis. And then we've got vocab and passages. So the passages are going to be last. And again, they're the most time consuming questions. So we want to save them for last, so that if we are running out of time, we just are getting to as many questions as possible because that's where the points come from. The more questions you get right, the more points you're going to get. But one other thing I think that's important with this strategy that people neglect is it's not just about going through the questions in terms of like they're how easy or short they are. It's also, as we're building towards the passages, we're building in certain skills that the passages are going to use. Right? So grammar is probably the least like the passages. The sentence structure that we need to pay attention to for a lot of rules, that's going to be important, maybe just for getting the kind of rhythm of these sentences down and the way the SAT asks these questions. Then we move into transitions where now we're thinking about the relationships between sentences. And that's really important for the passages, obviously, the relationship that they're doing. If there's a contrast, that's going to be very important. Then when we get to those outlines, we're given very specific instructions, and the precision of those words, the precision of those instructions, very important as well for the passages. And then we get to vocab, basically we get many passages where instead of having long answer choices, we have short ones. And those short answer choices are basically, still going to get us to focus on the strong words in the passage, right? A passage might be only, I don't know, 2 sentences, 3 sentences for a vocab. But even of that, only like 2 to 5 words are actually going to matter. So we want to make sure we have that ability to pick out the right words because that's the same skill we're going to use in the passage. So as we're doing all these other questions first, we're building towards the skills that we need for the passages. And that way, when we finally get to them, we've kind of warmed our brains up to those passages. So I do think that that's very, very important for the test. And that's something that's, I think, often neglected. And that also helps with stress. I'm seeing some questions here. What should we do when we get stressed? Well, by building towards the passages, which are definitely the most stressful question type, we are getting ourselves more comfortable. We're also locking in a lot of points on some easier stuff. So we're building our confidence so that when we get to those passages, we know we've still gotten a lot of good questions right. So I think there's a lot of benefits to saving these passages for last. You will get yourself to a point where hopefully you can accept that even though these are difficult, you've done the right stuff. Does anyone have any questions on that? I'll maybe pause for a sec and feel free to ask a question if you've got one. I'm going to try something here. Nope, don't want to do that. All right. Any questions about that? Oh, I'm on Top Chat too. Okay. Um, we'll talk about guessing a little bit. Take a sip of water. I'm already losing my voice. Yeah, stress makes a difference. Stress absolutely makes a difference. Okay. All right. Then, all right, we're saving passages for last. Now, this seems to go without saying, but I think this is something people neglect. We also want to save the hard, time-consuming passages for last, right? We don't want to necessarily go in order that they give us the passages because it's not going to be easy to hard. The reading section is not like math. The math section is generally from easy questions to hard. That's why we start at the beginning, because we're going to lock up a bunch of easy points in math. And we get to the end, we have the hardest questions. So if we do run out of time, at least we're running out of time on the hard ones. That is not the case in reading. That's why we have such an elaborate pacing strategy. But the passages themselves, even when we get to just having those passages, they're not in order of difficulty. You're going to have to find the easy ones. And there are ways to do that. I've talked about this in other lessons and other videos. So the probably the most kind of straightforward way to do this is that questions, passages with longer answer choices are more likely to be difficult, are harder questions, right? And that seems kind of obvious in a sense, right? The longer the answer choice, the more you have to read to figure out what the answer choice is saying. So that's just going to take, more time. And that makes it harder because you only have so much time, right? So this is a general rule of thumb that I go with. It's not perfect. Sometimes a question will be really hard, but have short choices because there's like a sneaky little trap. Other times a question might have long choices, but they're actually kind of straightforward. There's mostly filler in those choices. So keep that in mind. It's not perfect, but it's one thing that we can do to kind of keep it going and keep it going in a way that helps us, so that we're focusing our time on the right stuff. Okay. Beyond that, though, we can do some other things. Did that work? Click. Oh, there we go. Essentially, what we want to make sure we're doing is choosing very quickly when we get to a passage, whether we're going to solve it or skip it. Those are really the only options. Okay. So you get to a passage, you have a 5-second decision to make. Am I going to solve it or am I going to skip it? If you skip it, you can always come back later. But if you solve it, you are committed to solving it. This is a 5-second decision. You guys can't be dilly-dallying. You can't be like thinking, well, maybe I'll read it a little bit first. If you commit to solving a question, you have to get all the way to the end. You can't give up halfway through because then that's just wasted time. But we can, in addition to the answer choices, we can also make decisions about what to do based on the type of passage. I do this a little bit too. So I'll just kind of go in order of how the passages tend to appear. It's not perfect, but it's something. Generally, we're going to have those main idea and main purpose, overall purpose questions early on. For me, those are ones I like to solve. They tend to work well with the strategies. They tend to be relatively easy because you don't have to think about the details. It's about the main purpose, right? Similar to those, we might have those ones that are the underlined function of a sentence, right? That's kind of like, what's the main idea of this particular sentence? I also like to solve those because I still need to read the full passage, but I at least know just to focus on a specific part of it. So that's really helpful. And also some questions in this kind of same category are what I call focused questions. And those are ones where essentially you're going to have a question that's very specific about what they want. So they might say, which of the following would be most surprising to Mr. Darcy based on the passage, right? And so when you're reading that passage, if they say that Mr. Darcy was surprised about something, pay attention to that. That matters, right? Or which of the following is the, most strongly supported by the findings of the experiment, right? That means when they say the findings, you gotta go to that. So yeah, those are going to be things that I think we have a really clear sense of what we're supposed to do. In that same kind of grouping, that early grouping of passages, we also might get that cross-text connections passage. That's the one where we have 2 passages, right? 2 texts. I tend to skip those. Obviously, 2 passages is harder than 1 passage, right? So that's going to involve those relationships. I tend to skip those. That tends to be a lot of reading, a lot of back and forth. So I don't want to waste time on those. Similarly, if they give me a graph or a chart, that's also one that I tend to skip because it's kind of like having 2 passages, except one of them is numbers, right? So those are also ones that I tend to skip. The one of the ones that I really love, though, that's usually kind of around the charts, is what are called illustrate the claim passages. And I call them that because they have that question. That's the stem of the question. Which of the following best illustrates the claim? And sometimes these passages are really short. You'll get like fragments of a book or something, and it's basically just matching vocab words. These are really great. These are some of the easiest questions you'll find. Even when they're hard, they're at least fast. So I like to look for those. Similar to those are the ones that are asking you to support or weaken a claim. In both cases, what we're going to have is a specific sentence that is like, this is the hypothesis. And so there's one sentence that you really need to focus on. However, you still need to read the whole thing. So those ones can be a little trickier because sometimes there's like a big experiment going on and it'd be kind of difficult. So for me, those are ones I might skip. And then the last type of passage is always going to be the last one in the set is the logic or inference questions, which I know a lot of you hate. But to be quite honest, I think these are some of the easiest questions. I think the reason people find them hard is they're last. So everyone's getting to them when they have almost no time left. So they're all getting them wrong because you just don't have the time to actually do it. But if you're skipping around and you're going to the passages that you like best, these ones maybe are a better use of your time. So people have been asking about command of evidence and information and ideas. The SAT puts some passages into each of those two categories, but I don't. If it's a passage, I don't care which type it is. It's a passage, right? We're going to answer them all the same way. So thinking about the type of passage can help you, what the question itself is saying, but also sometimes you might decide whether to do a passage based on the content of the passage itself. Some people say they hate the science passages. Unfortunately, they're pretty much all science passages. So that doesn't really give us anything. We can't really choose to skip all of those. But I do think that if it's a literature passage and the literature, the piece is over 150 years old, that's probably a good skip. Whether English is your first language or your second or third or whatever, English 150 years ago sounds a little bit different from English today. So you're probably not going to understand what you're reading as well as you might want to. So a Shakespeare piece is something that you probably want to skip. On the other hand, I think poems are actually really good to do because in poems, even if they're old, you don't actually need to understand much of what you're reading. Dumb summaries work really well. We can think about positive and negative connotations. It's just a lot of vocab words. So that's also ones that I personally like. But for all of this, I want to stress there is no set formula. When you practice, you should be kind of coming up with your own little kind of way of measuring very quickly whether a passage is a solve or a skip. And on your SAT, you need to be making these decisions very fast. 5 seconds is all it takes for you to decide. I'm either going to commit to solving this right now, or I'm going to skip it and see what else I get and come back to it later. So very important that it's a quick decision. It's a gut decision. Hopefully, most of the time, you'll make the right decision. But even I sometimes skip things that I should have done. And sometimes I solve things that take longer than I expect. So it's not perfect, but this is how you want to think about it. If you are still just starting out your prep, I saw someone in here saying they had some time before their actual SAT, like a couple weeks, months, whatever it was. So basically with that, I would say start thinking about skipping and solving right away. Obviously, when you do practice tests and they're timed, you should be thinking about it. But even when you do individual questions from the question bank, I think all of you, and everyone can do this if they want, maybe tomorrow night before, when you're still finishing some practice. Anytime you do a single passage, look at it, do the thing where you say within 5 seconds, if this were on the test, would I solve it or would I skip it? Write it down if you don't think you can remember that. But whatever your decision is, though, you're going to do the question, right? Because it's just a random practice question, so you still do it. And then when you have chosen your answer, you've solved it, I want you to ask yourself, did I make the right decision? Was it good for me to solve it? Was it good for me to skip it? Right? Evaluate your decision. And you'll start to learn what the right decision is going to be by practicing. But I want you to ask yourself that question twice. I want you to ask, did I make the right call before when you do pick your answer, but before you've checked to see if it's correct, you should evaluate, should I have solved it? Should I have skipped it? And then once you check your answer, ask again, should I have solved it? Should I have skipped it? And the reason is sometimes you think it's really easy and you just walked right into a trap. So that'll also help you kind of get a sense of where the traps are likely to be and where something might seem really quick, but really isn't. So I think you need to start thinking about this. At any point in your prep, you have to have a sacrifice plan and be willing to move through that section according to your own strengths and weaknesses, not according to the order that the College Board just happens to give us. If you just go in the order they give you, anything can happen. So I'll let that sit for a sec. I got one more point to make, but I'm going to check I see some chats here. If you have questions about this specific point, ask them. And let's see what we got here. Yes, use my website. All the Blue Book tests are in the question bank, maybe with the exception of 11. I don't know if they put that in there, but remember, if you're using the question bank, there's a button. You should always read instructions for everything, right? It's part of the SAT as well. There's a button that says exclude active questions. You should check that box because then you'll exclude all of the Blue Book practice test questions so the question bank won't give those to you. That's really important. I wish the College Board was more, I don't know, clear about that, but so it goes. Yeah, the 150-year-old passages, I think, unless you're really into that, they're probably ones you want to skip. Odds of you understanding that really well, pretty slim. Cool. Tips for inference questions. Maybe I should say that. Why do I choose to solve the inference questions? Because they're basically just main ideas, where maybe we focus more on the main idea of the last sentence than the first. That's it. They're not harder. They're just kind of filling in a blank, seeing where the story takes you. So I think that those are pretty easy, for the same reason I think that the main idea questions tend to be pretty easy. So I have lessons on this. You can check out my channel and my website and go to my inference lesson. It's very good. But they're very main idea based, very main idea based. All right, so we're talking about score drops. So I think I can answer that by just on my next point. The practice tests are the same difficulty as the real test. I know that it may feel different, but I promise you it's not. It's just nervousness does creep into the real thing. And so try your best when you're taking practice tests to take them in a situation that feels like the real test. Don't take them after school when you're tired. Wake up on a day you're off, it's weekend or whatever, and take them in the morning. Have breakfast. Psych yourself up. Don't have your pets around to distract you, or have music playing. Basically, if you are worried about how distractions will affect you, go to a library, go to a coffee shop, go somewhere where there's lots of distractions and force yourself to power through. So find the thing that bothers you about the real test that doesn't seem to be happening on the practice test and see if you can attack that specifically. I think the pacing is one of those issues. So let's take a look here. I do want to look at one thing. Okay. So the other thing that most people cannot accept is that you probably will need to sacrifice the hardest passages for the sake of time. There's usually 10 passages per module. It's going to be very difficult unless you are one of the best, strongest readers in your grade, in your class, in the world. Most people are not going to be able to get through all 10 of those passages, at least in the hard module, in the time limit, myself included. So if I'm struggling, you're struggling. Let's talk about why that might be the case, because a lot of people ask me the same questions over and over again, which one of them is, how long should I spend on each passage? Well, unfortunately, there isn't a set rule, because what I'm trying to show here is that different passages are going to take different amounts of time. Maybe this is just there's nothing scientific about this, but let's say these 10 passages, you had 2 of them could maybe take a minute, 3 of them could take 2 minutes, 3 of them could take 3 minutes, 2 of them are going to take 4 minutes. And that's 4 minutes, even if you're doing everything right. They're just that hard. They're just that time consuming. So this variation is part of the problem is, even if we're doing everything right, we might still be taking several minutes. And if we add all this up, we're getting 25 minutes to take all these 10 passages at the times I gave you here. So this is just an estimate. This is just meant for kind of helping you guys understand the problem. But we don't have 25 minutes to answer all these questions. We only have, maybe a couple, like 20 if we're lucky. So we're going to have to make choices, and maybe about rushing through things or skipping things entirely. So what we need to realize is that we're probably going to run out of time. And let's say we run out of time and we can't get to those last 2 questions. Well, okay, in this case, that'd be awesome because that's not so bad. Two questions we have to guess on. And if they're the two hardest ones, well, if each of them would have taken me 4 minutes, suddenly we're in kind of a zone where maybe we can get through most of these passages, right? That takes us down to 17 minutes. That's a little bit less than, or a little bit more than half of the section time. And so that's pretty good, right? That's actually pretty reasonable. So let's kind of keep that in mind as our goal, right? The thing is, like I said at the beginning, we're not going to get the passages in order of difficulty. So it's not like those easy ones are going to come first. It's going to be much more scattered. And we're not going to know. They're not labeled. We don't know what anything is. But let's say we had 17 minutes and we just went in the order that they gave us. We would, in that case, in this particular case, run out of time a little earlier than just two questions left. We'd run out of time with three that we didn't get to. And that number seven there, number seven, that last three you can see is half crossed out because we kind of have to rush through it. We'd run out of time. 17 minutes would go by where we're still working on that question. So yeah, do we actually get it right? I don't know. We're rushing. Probably not. If it's a 3-minute question, it's probably harder. So this is the problem is, again, if we just go in order, we don't know what's going to happen. And so what could happen, the worst case scenario, is what happens if the hardest questions happen to be the first few, okay? Again, if we only had 17 minutes and we just went in order, now we've got even a bigger problem. Now we're going to run out of time after only 5 questions with maybe the 6th one that we can half do. And notice too, we're not even getting to the 2 easiest questions. And if we're just going in order, we're spending 8 minutes on the 2 hardest ones at the beginning. And just because you spend 4 minutes on it doesn't mean you're necessarily getting it right. Think about your own practice. How often do you spend 4 or 5 minutes on one passage only to get it wrong anyway, right? So we have to keep that in mind is this could get very bad very fast. And the reason I bring this up, the reason I really wanted to talk about this is I think this is what happened to me on practice test 11, the new Blue Book practice test. I'm not going to spoil any answers, but I will spoil the idea that I think in that test, the hardest, most time-consuming questions happened to be the first few passages that we were to have been shown. And so if you're only planning to sacrifice passages and skip questions when the timer runs low, you might end up in much deeper trouble than you thought because you might end up doing those hard time-consuming questions early. And that can cause real problems down the road where you might only get to half the questions that you expect to get to. And this applies to everyone. I don't care what your starting score is. Even if you've gotten 800 on all the practice tests, this could still happen to you on the real exam. So you've got to be prepared to deal with that, the randomness of where these hard questions fall. So I see a lot of chats coming through. I'll pause for a second and see if anything's related to this, because this, to me, if you're worried about the real test, if you are nervous about the real test, the best way to just deal with that is to have a plan for when things go badly and being able to recognize that these passages are not all equal and being able to move around that section in a smart way. That's what's going to, I think, make it so that when you start hitting hard questions, you're not panicking. You're able to just be like, all right, let's put that aside and see what else we get. So let me see what we got here. I got a lot of people looking for prayers. I'm sorry, Logic one. I'm just not gonna be able to do questions today. I don't have it prepared, but there's so many on my site. So go ahead and check those out. Iqbal Zafar, yeah, you are basically right. You can skip 3 passages and still get a 700 easily. And that's my mentality is I'd rather skip things, guess randomly, and have a 25% chance of getting it right, and not waste all the time that it might take me to still get it wrong. I'd rather spend that time making sure all the stuff I know, all the stuff that's predictable, I am getting right. And I think that that's hard for people to accept is like, you can balance, you can be accurate or you can be fast. Can't be both. Very hard to be both. So I always prefer accuracy. I'd rather get right everything I'm getting a chance to do. Ahmad, maybe some other time. I don't have the time for the questions. Yep. Get Shalin Meta 9749. You're right. Get 15 to 27 right on both modules, and you're pretty close to a 700 already. I would agree. If you can then knock in on a couple of the passages and the vocab, yeah, vocab is a little bit of luck. based on what words you happen to know. But if luck is on your side, it can definitely go great. Um, uh, I think it's best to know your pacing to plan how the test will go now. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is it's definitely best to have a plan because otherwise you'll be surprised, and surprise is where things go badly. This just jumped around for no reason. If you haven't done any prep, you're in a little bit of trouble. I would do some prep. I have some lessons that are like for procrastinators, so maybe look that on my channel for that. 550 to 630 is a pretty big range. Connects Creative, if I'm saying your name right, but I would say that 550 is probably what happens when you lose, you get in the easy module, and the 630 is probably what happens when you get in the hard module. So try to stay out of that easy module. Make sure you're not making careless mistakes in the first module. That might mean still sacrificing a passage or two for the sake of time, because if you get all the grammar transitions and outlines and most of the vocab right and most of the passages, you should be in the hard module, no problem. And then again, it's not about getting everything right. It's about just maximizing the points. So you can pick good targets in the hard module as well. Okay. So how are we going to deal with this? Okay, good. All right. How are we going to deal with this? Well, let's skip strategically. And this is, again, something that I would just normally do, and I wish I had done on practice test 11. If I'm taking a hard module, I've done all my grammar transitions, outlines, and vocab. I get to my first passage, and I look at it, and I'm like, ooh, this looks hard. There's a lot of long answer choices. I don't like this. All right, skip it. Go to the next one. And oh, this one kind of looks hard too, right? Oh no, this has a 400-year-old piece of Shakespeare. That's no good. I don't like that. Oh no, the next one, that's also hard. This is a cross-text connections passage. Oh my God, this is going badly, right? So now you can see why some of you panic. Is like you get 3 bad, rolls of the dice in a row, and suddenly it's like, oh my God, the whole test is going bad. But wait a minute, right? We know that there are still some easy passages, right? Keep going till you find something, and then you might find something that looks a little bit better, right? Maybe the answer choices are nice and short. Maybe it's a question type you like. Well, do that one, right? Let's say it takes you 2 minutes. That's pretty good, right? And some passages might only take a minute if you're really good. Most will probably take 2 minutes or more. And great, if you're getting them right, that's fine. If you're taking a little bit more than 2 minutes, that's okay too. But keep moving. Suddenly, okay, there's another one that doesn't look so bad. Let's answer that one. And now suddenly all that panic isn't so bad, right? Because we're choosing targets that are going to boost our score and boost our confidence. But okay, sometimes we get to one that looks like a graph that's kind of hard. I don't want to do that one. All right, let's keep moving, right? Oh, here's an easy one. Here's one of those illustrate the claim passages. All right, let's do that. Great. All right, let's keep moving. Okay, this one's not so bad either. This looks like short answer choices. All right, let's do it. Oh, okay, only 2 more left. All right, well, this one looks a little tricky. It's a science passage. How about we do this last one? Oh, hey, this one's super easy. Great. Now we've answered half the questions. And what is this? 2, 4, 6, 8 minutes, right? Of the 17 that we're pretending we have, right? Hey, that's not so bad. You still have more than half your time left to do these passages, right? So now go back. Hey, that number 3 back at the front, that one wasn't so bad. I think I can do that one, right? We're skipping around and picking those targets. And then maybe, you know what? That one at the end, that logic question. I like those logic questions. Let me give that a shot. Even if this is where we end up, this is still what? Another 6 minutes. This is 14 minutes. We'd still have some time unless, we just took a little bit longer on some of these, which is okay. Even if you're guessing randomly on these 3, at least you're guessing randomly on the ones that you were probably most likely to get wrong anyway, right? That's kind of the goal. Is a lot of people want to rush. And they're like, I need to get to every question because at least if I, take 10 shots, some of them will go in. But remember, if you guess randomly, you have a 25% chance of getting the question right. Most of you, when you rush through questions, you read it once, you cross out an answer choice, you kind of just go with whatever feels right. You're probably getting to maybe like a 33% chance of actually getting the question right. And you're spending a minute and a half, 2 minutes rushing through it to do it. Honestly, that's not worth it. If 5 seconds and a random guess gets you a 25% chance, you got to make sure you're putting in time that significantly increases the chance of you getting it right. So don't rush through it because you're not really improving your odds of getting those points. In fact, honestly, if you rush, you're probably taking whatever the shortcut answer is. And we know from math that they put shortcut answers there, knowing that they're good traps. So if you're going for those shortcuts, you're probably actually getting way more wrong. I see this all the time. I'll see people who take practice tests and I'm like, what was your pacing strategy? What'd you do? We're like, oh, I just rushed through these ones. And they'll get out of those 10 passages just 2 or 3 right, which is no better than random guessing. But they'll have spent 15, 20 minutes solving those questions. But if you're spending 20 minutes to do no better than random guessing, your plan sucks. I'm sorry, that's not a plan. That's just you flailing for 20 minutes. So skipping strategically, I think, is going to get you more points, especially if you're spending the time to say, you know what, I think I have a good chance of getting this question right. If I don't rush through it, I'm going to lock in these points. That should be your goal. And so, again, I'm bringing this up because of my experience with test 11 is we don't know where those hard questions are going to fall. So if you play by the rules that the SAT gives you and you just say, I'm going to do the questions in the order that are presented, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting through. We don't know what the distribution of those hard ones is going to be. And so that might throw you off. I would prepare for the worst. And if you have time to get to everything, great. But if not, at least you're leaving questions aside that you had the least chance of getting right anyway. I hope that helps. Let's see what we got here. I'm at 11. People getting scared. I don't know about any of the comments, but I'm trying not to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you so that way when you get a hard question, you're like, oh, yeah, this was going to happen. I'm ready. I'm prepared. It's fine. 1400, great score. Ugh, why does this jump around? None of the tests are easier or harder. It's all perception, just how it lines up with your strengths and weaknesses. That's all it is. Firm Strand, thank you for bringing this up. I want to talk about this. I also heard that Desmos won't be on the March SAT. I don't know why everyone keeps talking about that. I don't blame you for bringing it up. I'm glad you did. But oh my God, I don't know where this came from. I don't know if there's like certain like TikToks or something that are just doing this for clicks. But it's a ridiculous premise. How could it be that Desmos won't be useful? Desmos is a calculator. It's a math test. Calculators work on math tests. Now, there have always been questions that are not good to use Desmos for, right? How are you going to use Desmos to find the surface area of a prism, right? If you know the formula, you're plugging things in, but like that's just not it's just finding areas, right? So there are plenty of things that Desmos was never really good at, right? Finding the median of a data set when it's presented in a histogram. Desmos isn't really good at that. You just need to know how to do that. And even if you found a way to use Desmos with it, it's just so much more work than just like doing it by hand. So I don't know why this rumor has been going around that somehow this SAT will not be Desmosable, but like it's preposterous. There will always be things that are better to do by hand. There will always be some things that are better to do with Desmos. And the entire point of the SAT is to force you to decide, to think about what's most efficient. So it's not just like Desmos solves everything. Sometimes plugging in a number manually is easier and faster and more reliable. So, if you're not thinking about the decision making, that's when you're going to be in trouble. Because if somehow there's a question where Desmos isn't a good choice, you might be going down the wrong path, and so I don't know where that came from. Feel free to, in comments and things, show me where everyone's hearing this. But like, if Desmos is great, it's a great tool. You just got to know when to use it. So, I don't know what that's all about. Cool. Do we have any questions? Don't gang up on Firm Strand for bringing that up. I'm glad they did. They're just saying they heard it. That's fine. You don't blame someone for hearing it and repeating it. It's it's the people who put it out there in the first place. Um, uh, uh, Aku Nep, a good question. There are apparently two questions that do not count for the final score. That is true. In every module, there are two pre-test questions. Those are going to be what we used to call experimental questions. They would basically be things where you the college board is just kind of testing out a question, getting data on it, so they can tell for the future tests whether it's a good question, how much it should be worth, all that stuff. You will never know which questions are the pre-test questions. There's nothing you can do about it. But it stands. It gets back to this, which is if something looks hard and you spend 5 minutes doing it, it is entirely possible that you wasted that 5 minutes because it was a pre-test question. It's not to say that all the pre-test questions are hard. That's not true. Some are really easy, right? But we just don't know. So if you're going to do a question that doesn't count, I'd rather be one of those 1 or 2 minute deals, not one of those 4 minute ones, right? So another reason to target the easiest stuff, the stuff that's going to get you right answers the most often and the most quickly, is there are going to be two questions that don't count on your test, and you're going to have to do them, and you won't know, and you'll never know. But if you spend 4 minutes on something and it doesn't even count, that's a pretty rough waste of time. So all the more reason, even in math, we need to do this too, is when you get to number 15 in math where the hard questions start skipping around. Find things that you can answer confidently and quickly. Don't get caught up in some elaborate geometry question just because it's the next one. Just move around, find plug points and equations opportunities, find Desmos opportunities. That's the way to do it. Okay, I'm starting to lose my voice. You guys are all arguing with each other. I'm kind of fine with it. Just whatever anger you have, get it out, I guess, because you're going to need to be focused on the test. Okay, you can't identify the experimental. Okay, tips for vocab. Honestly, at this point, if the issue for vocab is that you don't know words, that's an easy thing to do on Friday, is just kind of look through some word lists. I have mine on my website. There's tons all over the place. You see a word once, maybe that's enough for you to remember it on the test. So it's not the best thing, but it's something that's relatively easy on the mind. So if you are going to do test prep on Friday, vocab is pretty easy. But you anything could come up. So we don't know. But remember with vocab, if you know 3 of the answers, you should be able to get the answer every time, right? You don't need to know all 4 words. If you know 3, either one of them will be right and you'll just pick it, or they'll all be wrong and you pick the one that's left. So remember, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know 3 of the 4 choices. Okay. All right. 2 experimental questions in each module. 2. And we've kind of been dancing around this, but how to avoid score drops. My biggest advice is stick to the plan. Whatever you've done in the practice tests, there's a reason it worked. It helped. What happens when people get nervous is they start to kind of second guess. They start to get to a point where they're like, well, I don't have the time to do this strategy. I don't have the time to go through this process. I don't have the time to write on my scratch paper, right? This is why pacing is so important, is it becomes, I need to get to as many questions as possible instead of let me do these questions right. And so the score drop happens because all the stuff you learned that saw the score go up, suddenly you're giving up on that and you're going back to the old habits that got you your original score. So you don't want to do that. I'm going to close the screen share because I don't like looking at the 2 of them. It's so weird. How was that? Was that annoying to see me twice? Now I'm like looking at myself. All right, there we go. So there it is. It's one of those things where it's like you've come so far. My advice is stick to the plan. That's why I want you to have a pacing plan and a skipping plan in all the modules, all 4. So that way, when things start to look hard or start to look weird, you're not panicking. You're just like, yeah, I planned for this. I knew this might happen. I knew this could happen. Even if I've gotten 800s every time, it can happen. So arrogance is a big reason scores go down as well. People think, I don't need to skip questions. I know everything. And then they hit a question that takes a little bit longer than they expected, and the whole thing falls apart, right? So on the practice test, when you're calm and cool and collected because there's no pressure, it's very easy to just kind of keep moving. But on the real test, people start to second guess. So my advice is, you know, just stick to the plan, no matter how tempting it is to kind of start skipping steps. Don't do that. Yeah. Block cool. You will get a 1500. I hope that was helpful. Verisimilitude and tepid. Good words to know. I like tenuous. That's always a good word as well. Tenuous means kind of weak or not strong, like a tenuous grasp on something is weak. What did I score when I took the SAT? It was out of 2,400. I got a 2310. That's basically the equivalent of like a 15, 50, 60, something like that, depending on how you're counting. I have taken the test many times since then. And my most recent, I think on the test 11, I think it was a 1570. I think I got 770 reading. You can see that video. But I haven't gotten a 1600 in a while. I'm usually about 50-50. So I've just had a bunch of tough breaks, but it's always the reading. I always run out of time. But if I run out of time, I'm guessing randomly on one or two and hoping for the best. But I'm getting everything else right. I don't get questions wrong by surprise. That almost never happens. How many questions can you get wrong on reading module 2, assuming you got everything right in module 1? I'm assuming, for 1510. You should estimate it's about 10 or 20 points per question. So in the reading module 2, you'd probably be able to get even like 5 questions wrong would be pretty safely a 1510 is my guess. Remember, hard questions are worth less actually than easy ones. So careless mistakes cost you quite a bit, which is another reason why I'd rather be certain on the careless mistakes or on the easy ones than risk all those points for the sake of getting to a couple hard ones that I might have gotten wrong anyway. So I'm always in favor of accuracy over speed. But yeah, that's the other thing too, right? I was just talking about all these passages and how you can get a bunch of things wrong, and that's okay, right? Is like if your goal is an 1600, well, good luck to you. I don't know how that's going to happen. But if your goal is a 1550, you have some wiggle room in both sections. So a sacrifice in one question is not really that big of a deal. Like if it means that you get closer, I think what happens is a lot of people are so intent on getting an 800 that they end up losing the 770, the 780, and getting a 710 because they were so intent on getting the 800 they couldn't compromise. So maybe that's the lesson: is it's a compromise. I don't care about that 800 because I know that if I do all this stuff right, I'll at least get a 770, and then hopefully luck will be on my side, and maybe I'll add to that. That to me is the right way to think about it, but some people have trouble accepting that, I think. Good question here, RDJ Chess. At what time do you recommend we should be done with the grammar? The ideal, even the hard module, is that it takes you 10 minutes to get through those. But I will admit that sometimes I go over that. So if you are in the 11, 12, even 13 minutes, that's not the end of the world. Just like I showed before with the passages, we don't know where the hard questions are going to fall. It might be that we just get a lot of hard transition questions that take longer than usual. So it's okay for that to kind of go a little over than what we normally expect. So again, you got to be flexible and be okay with things not quite going according to the plan, because there's easy questions somewhere. So it's just about finding them. But I don't think skipping grammar, transitions, and outlines is ever good. I think you really want to answer all those questions and spend the time on getting them right. But yeah, 10 minutes to 12 to 13 is totally fine. I've gotten 1600s, but not all the time. Okay. Does the second half module get harder as you get to the end? Karamavaz, yes. It's not linear, meaning it's not the case that 22 is always harder than 21 or 21 is always harder than 20. But that's why when you get to 15, you should start skipping around. There's going to be hard questions, and what's hard for you might not be hard for someone else. So if number 16 is like a crazy hard geometry question and you suck at geometry, you hate it, then skip it. Go to 17. See what 18 is, right? Skip around. And again, a lot of people, especially people who get 800s in math on the practice test, they don't plan for that. They're just doing the questions in order because they think they've got it all under control. And then one question taking a little bit longer than usual is all it takes to completely destroy the score. And that's where you see score drops, is when you go from 790, 800, because you don't really have any big issues. And then one question throws you off. It just, sometimes we get stuff we weren't expecting. And then suddenly your whole world collapses because you're getting that wrong. And now you're rushing through everything else. You're skipping steps. Everything goes haywire. So that's why better to skip and go in order. That's going to make you the most points. All right. Feels like we're winding down here. How to avoid getting a heart attack on the test. I don't know. At your age, if you're getting a heart attack, you got other problems besides your SAT score. So I don't know, eat healthier. But I feel like I've answered that in other ways, right? Just have a plan for things going bad. And then when it does, okay, that's the way it goes. My Intmo, I don't know if I'm saying that right, 577. Should I skim and guess the vocab if you do not learn it? Good question. So I don't think you should give up on it because you might have a sense of a word even if you can't define it. Right. So if I asked you what does contentious mean and you can't give me a quick definition, that's not great. You should, it means that something is something people fight over, contentious. But maybe you've heard that word. Maybe you've encountered it in a book or heard it in a TV show. Who knows, right? And somewhere in the back of your brain, that word is rattling around. So if you see it in a choice, you kind of understand what the passage is going for. You might not be able to define the word, but you might have a sense of like, this just doesn't fit. Or like, I feel like I've heard this word used in that case. So you don't want to give up on the vocab entirely if you don't know the words, but there is a point where you kind of want to quit. What I like to say is that the vocab fairy isn't going to float down during the test and whisper the definitions in your ear. So there will be a point where you've gone as far as you can with your knowledge, and you have to decide, this is now a guess. Go with whatever feels most right. Go with your gut, and then hope for the best. But yeah, it might not, you might, at a certain point, you're gonna have to guess. Yeah. Should I take another practice test? No. If your test is on Saturday, no more practice tests. Simply do questions. Don't drain your brain with a practice test. If your reading section is weak, Azra, then what should you do now? Do more reading. Specifically focus on grammar, transitions, and outlines, because that's the easiest points to get, especially with 2 or 3 days to go. So those are easy. Yeah, don't cheat, don't leak the test, and don't deal with any suspicious things that the leaked questions, any sites like that the leaked questions are coming from. I wouldn't touch any of that stuff. If you find it, stay away, because I don't know. I'm suspicious. I wonder if maybe there's a sting operation or something, and they're trying to get us to, look at that stuff and then catch us. So I'm not looking at it, to be clear, but I would just say stick to the official resources that are released, and other stuff like my channel, my questions. You'll be fine. You don't need to cheat. No more practice tests. I already said that. How do you get math 800? If you're at 720, 760, 800 is very close. Maybe a little luck, but I would say still the same thing. I would try to get towards that 760 mark more than the 800 mark, right? So a strategic skip or two might mean you're giving up on 20 points, but 780 better than 760. So, try that. Oh God, this is so annoying. Every time I scroll, it jumps back down. Yeah, practice test 11 is great, not because it's harder or more realistic than any of the others, just because it had that distribution of hard questions for the passages that I think everyone needs to experience and get used to. How is my day going? It's almost over. It's 7:30 where I am, and so I will be eating dinner soon and relaxing. Is vocab and grammar more important than the passages? Yes. Passages are always going to be some of the most time consuming questions, and they're not worth more. So why spend more time earning the same number of points? Um, if you guess 3 reading questions in each English module and spend more time on that, can you get above 680? Yeah, if you got everything else right and got 6 questions wrong, then 680 is doable. It might be, it's probably depends maybe on which of the 6, but I would say that that's possible. Yeah. Um, a module 1 reading, the ideal is that both module 1s you are comfortable with time. I would say that reading module 1, I'm not sitting there with 10 or 15 minutes like I am in math module 1. The passages just take a certain amount of time to read. But ideally, if you really want a top score, if you want a 700, 750, reading module 1 has to be completed in the time limit. If you're not there, don't panic, but it's harder to then have a hard math reading module that makes up for that. So you really do want to focus as best you can on being accurate and speedy enough to get through math reading module 1. See, I'm losing my mind. It's a sign I gotta log off soon. Should we expect similar questions in real SAT as practice test 7 and 11? Yes. All the practice tests are the same difficulty as a real test. How about writing on your clothes? Don't do that. That'll get you kicked out. What can I expect if I got 1400 in practice test 11? This is Snake, S4J, and aiming for 1500. Yeah, I mean, if you had the same experience in practice test 11 that I did, it might just be about pacing, right? Was completely thrown off by the pacing. And so if you were similarly thrown off, then adjusting your pacing strategy could just keep you on track for 1500 because you don't need to get everything right. You just need to get the right stuff wrong, if that makes any sense. No practice tests. No practice tests between now and Saturday. You can look at old practices you've already done and then look at the questions you got wrong and watch my videos for them, but do not do another practice test. Yes, this will be uploaded later. Curve is always the same. Always the same. Who designs the test? College Board. All right. I think we're getting repetitive with the questions here. Carelessness, my info, same thing I've been saying. I always say, be more accurate. The thing with careless mistakes in the SAT, especially obvious in math, is we can see them coming, right? We know in a question, you can tell from the choices, right? If they give me 1 and -1 and 2 and -2 as answer choices in math, I know that they're hoping I make a careless mistake with a negative. The choices a lot of times tell you what they're hoping you do. Certain topics like percentages, they know the careless mistakes that go into that. So you can see those careless mistakes coming. And the idea is you want to play defense. You want to be like, okay, percentages, I got to be really careful that I follow these instructions and choose the right formula. Because if I don't, I'm going to fall for the careless mistake. So careless mistakes, we think of that from tests in school as oh, I misread the question. I lost a negative. I added wrong. But remember, the SAT is engineering these questions to kind of poke you where the careless mistake is most likely to happen. So you got to see it coming. Okay. All right. December got destroyed, but you're going to do better this time. Bloxy cool. I know it. Okay. Who keeps asking if it be uploaded to watch later? Yes, definitely upload it. Hassan. No, Ashra, okay. Yeah, I skim the English questions really fast. So one thing that might be helpful, I do have the videos of me taking the practice test from Blue Book where I time myself and I've never seen the questions. In fact, let me just, it's on my website. Just search my channel for walkthrough for any practice test. And that can be really useful because you get to see how fast I move. And you'll see I'm making decisions fast, but I'm also skipping, like I said. So those can be helpful, but also remember that I'm 20 years older than you. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm very, very good at it. And for me to still have trouble finishing is saying something. It's a tough test. So give yourself some slack. it's very hard, especially if English is not your first language. I'm always impressed when people who are not native English speakers are taking this test, and even getting a 500 to me is impressive. So, you know, I know it might not seem that way as you're dealing with it, but I think it's impressive. All right, I think I'm going to cut it off here. No more practice tests. All right. Thank you. You're the goat. Yes. Thank you for being here and saying that and streaming with me despite my technical difficulties at the beginning. I promise if you are taking later SATs, May, June, August, I will have figured out better tech and we will have better live streams. I'm still learning, as you can see. I'll end on this. Santi Rojas, I'm having trouble to focus. Well, me too. Best thing you can do is, especially starting tonight, go to bed relatively early, put the phone down, and go to sleep. Because if you are tired during your test, it is going to affect it. I take these practice tests at all times of the day because nothing is riding on it for me. I take them in the morning, I take them in the evening, I take them after a night where I haven't gotten much sleep. And I will tell you the difference makes it's very big, right? Is I can feel how slow my brain moves when I have not gotten enough sleep. So that means maybe my last piece of advice is you don't need to be cramming Friday night. You're better off resting that brain, letting it kind of recharge, do some things that make you happy, that make you, relaxed. And then on Saturday, just hit the ground running. Be prepared, have some breakfast, fuel your body, bring a snack to the test. That way you can make sure you're fully focused. And I would say for the English, I talked a little bit about dumb summaries, strong words, and trap answers. I would say that is probably stuff that's worth reviewing. That is in the strategy series playlist. Top thing of my channel is that, and those are all good things, reading and math, to review the couple days before. So watching my videos is also a very nice kind of thing to do, or any videos, any channel, anyone you like that's helping you learn. Watching videos is nice because it's very passive. You're not really actively using that brain. It's you're absorbing. That's okay. You can do that a little bit over these next few days so that you're resting that brain. All right, guys, I'm almost out of voice, so we're gonna call it. Thank you guys for joining. Hopefully it was helpful. Feel free, comment on that channel. I'll be checking the comments on the videos over the next couple days. So if you have any last minute questions, hopefully I can answer them. And then when scores come back, let me know. Let me know how it goes. Best of luck to everyone. You're all going to do great. You've been studying. Your head's in the right place. So best of luck to all of you. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. Remember, when it comes to your scores, don't settle for less. Settele for more. Thanks, guys.